Big news in the golf world. Golf's U.S. Open Championship kicked off in Los Angeles on Thursday. Two players firing off record rounds of 62. Not bad under fantastic conditions. The course did start to show a little teeth on Friday with Ricky Fowler leading again Friday afternoon. And fan favorite Tiger Woods is out, recovering from injury and surgery, though the U.S. Open is still a big draw, drawing tons of attention as players of the rival PGA Tour and LIV Golf are competing in this year's major. And the PGA Tour, of course, recently announced it plans to merge with the Saudi-funded LIV Golf, but the U.S. Justice Department is saying not so fast. It has informed the PGA Tour that it will review the tour's proposed merger with LIV Golf's for antitrust concerns. Two Democratic senators urged the federal agency to investigate the deal. News of that planned merger stunning the golfing world, essentially calling a truce after a more than 1 year fight to the death battle. For more on this planned merger that's not approved yet, Mike Bako, sports editor at Daily National. How's your golf game, by the way?
Not as good to be able to play in Los Angeles this weekend. I got to tell you that much. But the spring is here, the summer is here. Hopefully it gets a little bit better.
I mean, let's skip back a couple months ago when the two groups, LIV Golf and the PGA, essentially lawyered up, sued each other. Then LIV Golf gave them sort of the short finger and says, we're going to take away your players and we're going to put them on our team. The PGA retaliates and say, well, if you're going to do that, then they're banned from playing any tournaments that we're going to do, right? Fast forward, they have a truce? How did we get to a truce after war? And now they're friends?
Not only do we not know how they got there, but the PGA Tour players did not know. And honestly, if you look at all the specifics of this deal, which are coming out and dribbling out, there aren't very many specifics involved in this deal. Obviously, it came about because both sides were in legal battles. Both sides were going into what's called discovery, where they were going to have to basically air their dirty laundry. They've been airing their dirty laundry in the media. I mean, Jay Monahan, the PGA commissioner, sitting with 9/11 widows, bad-mouthing the Saudis and bad-mouthing LIV Golf, and then turning around and sitting for one of these interviews on CNBC as if they were buddy-buddy talking
Mike,
about how they did this.
You know what's worse, Mike? You know what's worse? These players who stood up for the PGA Tour, okay, who said, we're not going to go to this other competitor because we're going to stand by what we think is right because you, as my boss, has asked me to do so. So we stand by you. And all these people who leave get all this money. The players who stayed didn't get the money. But now we're going to welcome them all back. They get to keep their money and they get to come back. These players are livid.
They've got to be livid, and it's not the Tiger Woods player. It's not the Sergio Garcia player. I mean, even someone like Jon Rahm, who's been a loyal soldier for the PGA. It's not those guys. It's the middle of the road, rank and file guys that when they looked at their careers, you almost think about it. I go back to the steroid era in baseball, and there were so many middle of the rung players who decided not to do this while they saw those same players that they were in those playing time battles with do steroids and take off and make all this money and elongate their career. And now the same thing on the PGA side. You would have thought when I first heard the breaking news about this partnership coming about, I thought about those huge contracts that Brooks Koepka, Justin Johnson, that I just thought that they would go away. I thought they were all going to merge. But no, not only do they get to reapply for their PGA card, but what's the use of this merger if they're not going to be able to play on these tour events? They get to keep their money. They get to come back in good standing.
Look, it's unfair no matter how you dice. I got a buddy of mine in Seattle, Eric. He was about to quit his job to practice golf so he can join the LIV players and collect the big payday. But we have you on the show because I love the fact that you tell us the truth, right, with no filter. Why do you think they called a truce? I don't buy that it's good for the game and oh, the players and we're tired of the fighting. I don't buy that. What do you think the real reason is there's a truce and now we're talking about this merger?
Do you remember the movie Thelma and Louise at the very end where they're driving the car almost off the cliff? Well, that's what was kind of happening in this case. Now, yes, the PGA ratings were good for the most recent tournaments, but if you saw what LIV was putting on the CW, I mean, their inaugural broadcast had horrible audio quality. It improved over time, but no one was going to these events. No one was watching it. It was kind of just happening.
But
And
why,
it was not doing.
but why does the PGA care? I mean, it's a competitor. You're trying to smash them into the ground. You're winning. Well, why do the merger?
The PGA was looking at that cliff as well, and they were looking at guys like Tiger Woods coming to the end of their career, and they were looking at some of these players that were coming up, and they were like, wait a minute, we don't have the star power. We need some of those players back. Honestly, what it boils down to is that this was just a fight that was going to drag on, and they already had the Justice Department involved. You have to also realize that the PGA, they went pretty strong-handed against some of those mid-tier players, saying that if you leave to go to LIV, you are not going to come back. You are going to be expelled. So that's what launched this Justice Department inquiry in the first place, and now it's continued.
You know what's funny? The Justice Department typically gets involved when they think there's a monopoly of some sort where something's being manipulated. First of all, LIV Golf didn't even exist a few years ago. So, okay, so was it created? And now we have this merger. It's not a national security issue, please. Why are two Democratic senators putting their name on the hat to try to make things even, I guess, worse for the golf game, which I don't know how you make it worse after what we went through the last year and a half?
Well, certainly anytime politicians get involved or throw their hat into the ring when it comes to sports matters, it's to make those headlines and to kind of get ahead of the field. Obviously, the Saudis are a pretty easy target, as is the PGA at this point. But, and I don't have the expertise enough to get into this, but it does open up a very, very slippery slope in terms of foreign investments in pro leagues. Could this happen in other leagues? In NASCAR, let's say, or if there was a foreign entity that wanted to zero in on specific sports. Obviously, you don't think that they could do it in the MLB or in NHL or the NBA, certainly not in the NFL. But it does become an interesting issue with some of these second and third tier sports. How much influence can they have, and can they poach players, and can they start rival leagues? That's of an interest from a governmental level, I think.
Mike, I want to see you on the first tee. We'll set up a date. Good to see you, and have a good weekend, my friend.
All right. Happy golf.